Blood soaked through the bandage. 80,000 people held their breath. And Bob Marley stepped onto that stage knowing the men who tried to murder him were somewhere in that crowd. 40-8 hours earlier, automatic weapons had torn through his home. His wife took a bullet to the skull. His manager absorbed 5 shots meant for Bob. The doctors said he was lucky to survive. But survival wasn't enough for Bob Marley. What he did next wasn't just brave. It was something else entirely. Something that would prove why bullets can never kill an idea. The evening of December 3, 1976, started like any other rehearsal. Hope Road, Kingston. Bob's home filled with music. The Wailers running through their set for the Smile Jamaica Concert. A free show meant to ease the violence ripping Jamaica apart. The country was bleeding. To political parties, the People's National Party and the Jamaica Labour Party had turned the island into a battlefield. Streets were war zones. Neighborhoods became tribal land. People were dying every day. Bob wanted to rise above it. When both sides asked him to perform, he said yes, not for politics, but for peace. The Smile Jamaica Concert was supposed to be neutral territory where music could unite what politics had destroyed. But in Kingston in 1976, neutrality was a death sentence. Bob stood in the kitchen with Rita and his manager, Don Taylor, discussing which songs would carry the right message. In the living room, the band rehearsed War Bob's anthem against oppression. Nobody heard the car stop outside. Nobody heard the footsteps. Then 3 men crashed through the front door with automatic weapons raised. The first gunshots shattered everything. Band members hit the floor. Instruments exploded across the room. Screaming erupted. In the kitchen, Bob heard the chaos and shoved Rita behind him. Don Taylor moved forward, placing his body between Bob and the doorway. That choice saved Bob Marley's life. The gunmen burst through, firing. Don's body convulsed as bullets ripped through him. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 shots tore into his flesh. He collapsed in a spreading pool of blood. But Don's sacrifice bought Bob a fraction of a second, just enough to react. Bob lunged for the back door, dragging Rita with him. A bullet grazed his chest. Another shredded through his left arm. The pain was blinding. Then Rita went down. A bullet struck her head. She crumpled. Bob's entire world collapsed in that moment. His wife, the mother of his children, shot in the skull right in front of him. The gunfire wouldn't stop. Bullets chewed through walls, obliterated windows, destroyed everything they touched. The house became a massacre scene in seconds. Bob grabbed Rita. She was still breathing, impossibly still breathing, and hauled her toward the exit. His arm screamed. Blood poured down his chest, but he couldn't stop moving. Outside, a band member had heard the shots and pulled his car around back. Bob threw Rita into the seat and dove in after her. The car screeched away as more bullets chased them into the night. Inside, the gunmen kept shooting. They shot the walls. They shot the furniture. They shot everything that moved. When they finally left, Bob Marley's home looked like an execution chamber. Don Taylor was dying on the kitchen floor. Rita had a bullet lodged in her skull. Bob had 2 gunshot wounds and was going into shock. The Smile Jamaica Concert was in 2 days. At University Hospital, doctors rushed Bob into emergency treatment. The bullets had missed his vital organs, but the damage was severe. His arm was mangled, muscles torn, nerves shredded. Rita was in surgery. The bullet had entered her head, but hadn't penetrated her brain. It sat lodged in her skull. Surgeons worked for hours just to stabilize her. Don Taylor was critical. 5 bullets, internal bleeding everywhere. Doctors weren't certain he'd survive the night. By midnight, the news spread like wildfire across Jamaica. Bob Marley has been shot. The concert is canceled. He might not make it. The nation stopped breathing. But here's what nobody expected. Here's the part that transforms this story into something beyond comprehension. While Bob lay in that hospital bed recovering from gunshot wounds, political leaders from both parties came to see him. They wanted to know one thing: would he still perform? Bob's answer stunned everyone. Yes, I'll perform. His family couldn't process it. His mother, Shadella, begged him to cancel. Bobby, they tried to kill you. They'll try again. Please don't go. Rita, from her own hospital bed, pleaded with him. Bob, it's not worth your life. Cancel it. His closest friends thought he'd lost his mind. Man, whoever did this is still out there. You go on that stage, you're a target. They'll finish the job. Bob heard them all. Then he said something that would define everything he stood for. The people who are trying to make this world worse aren't taking a day off. How can I? He meant every word. While he was lying there with bullet wounds, the people spreading violence and hate were still working, still dividing, still destroying. If Bob canceled, they won. Fear won. Violence won. Bob Marley had spent his entire life fighting fear and violence. He wasn't about to stop now, but there was something deeper, something Bob kept private until years later. Bob believed this was his purpose. He believed Jah had protected him for a reason. Those bullets could have killed him, should have killed him, but they didn't. He was spared because his work wasn't finished. December 5, 1976, National Heroes Park, Kingston. 5 p.m. The Smile Jamaica Concert was scheduled for sunset. By early afternoon, massive crowds had already gathered. Not thousands, not tens of thousands. 80,000 people showed up. Many came because they'd heard Bob was shot and needed to see if he was really alive. Others came because they believed in his message. Some came in defiance to prove violence wouldn't win. But everyone came with the same question burning in their minds. Would Bob Marley actually perform? Backstage, Bob was preparing. His arm was heavily bandaged. The pain was intense. Doctors had given him prescription painkillers. Bob refused them. Why not? His brother asked. You're in pain. Take the pills. Bob shook his head. I need to feel everything tonight. I need to be fully present. His band members were terrified. They kept scanning the area, expecting more gunmen. Security was everywhere. But everyone knew the truth. If someone wanted Bob dead badly enough, they'd find a way. Junior Marvin, Bob's guitarist, said years later, we all thought Bob was going to die on that stage. We thought we might all die, but Bob was so calm, like he'd already made peace with whatever happened. At 7:30 p.m., as the sun dropped over Kingston, Bob Marley walked onto that stage. The crowd's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. 80,000 people erupted, not in celebration, but in relief, in disbelief, in something that felt like witnessing a resurrection. Bob Marley was alive. He stood at the microphone, silent, just looking out at that ocean of humanity. His left arm hung useless at his side, bandaged, weak, clearly damaged. He looked thinner. His face showed the weight of the last 48 hours, but his eyes burned with something beyond pain, beyond fear. Purpose. Bob raised his good arm. Slowly, gradually, 80,000 voices fell silent. Good evening, Jamaica, Bob said. His voice steady despite everything. I am glad to be here with you tonight. The crowd exploded again. Bob waited for silence. 2 days ago, some people tried to stop this concert from happening. They tried to stop us from coming together. They tried to stop the music. He paused. The stadium went dead quiet. But as you can see, Bob gestured to himself, to his bandaged arm, to the stage. The music is still here. We are still here, and we are not going anywhere. The roar was deafening. Bob turned to his band and nodded. The opening chords of Trenchtown Rock began. For the next 90 minutes, Bob Marley didn't just perform. He preached. He prophesied. He fought with every word, every note, every movement of his wounded body. When he performed I Shot the Sheriff, the irony cut through everyone. Bob had been shot, but he was still standing. During No Woman, No Cry, Bob's voice broke with emotion. Rita was supposed to sing backup on this song, but Rita was in a hospital bed, recovering from a bullet in her skull. Bob sang her part himself, tears streaming down his face. But during war, something truly extraordinary happened. Bob had adapted the lyrics from a speech by Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian Emperor Rastafarians. Revered as divine, the song was a declaration against oppression, against injustice, against everything tearing Jamaica apart, until the philosophy which holds one race superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned. Everywhere is war. As Bob sang, he did something nobody expected. He unbuttoned his shirt. The bandage on his chest became visible. Blood had seeped through, creating dark stains across the white gauze. Bob pulled the shirt open wider, showing the entire crowd his wounds. 80,000 people gasped. "You see this?" Bob said into the microphone, his voice fierce. "This is what happens when you speak truth. This is what they do when you refuse to choose sides, when you choose love over hate." He let his shirt hang open, exposing his damaged body to the world. "But I'm still here, and I'll keep speaking truth until my last breath." What happened next? People who were there still talk about it with reverence. Al Anderson, Bob's guitar tech, described it years later. The energy in that stadium shifted. It was like watching a spiritual transformation happen to 80,000 people at once. Bob wasn't just performing anymore. He was channeling something, and everyone could feel it. Bob sang for 90 minutes straight. No breaks, no sitting down, no concessions to his injuries. His wounded arm hung limp. Blood continued seeping through his bandages. His face showed the strain, the pain, the exhaustion. But he never stopped. Between songs, Bob spoke to the crowd. "They can shoot our bodies, but they cannot shoot our spirits. They cannot kill the message. They cannot silence the music. One love," he shouted. "One love." 80,000 voices roared back. "One heart, one heart. Let's get together and feel all right." The entire stadium sang with him. Political rivals stood shoulder to shoulder, rich and poor, young and old. Everyone united in that single moment. This was what Bob had been trying to achieve. Not through politics, not through taking sides, through music, through love. But something darker was happening that night, something most people in the crowd didn't know about. Security had spotted suspicious individuals throughout the venue. Men who weren't celebrating, men who were watching Bob with cold, calculated eyes. Some of Bob's security team believed the assassins had returned, that they were waiting for the right moment to finish what they'd started. Bob's head of security admitted in a later interview, "We were certain Bob was going to be killed on that stage. We had reports of armed men in the crowd, but Bob refused to leave. He said, 'If I die for the people. Let them shoot me while I'm singing.' But the shots never came. Whether the assassins lost their nerve, or whether the sheer spiritual power of what was happening on that stage stopped them, nobody knows. What we do know is that Bob Marley completed his entire set, 90 minutes, wounded, exhausted, in constant danger, but unbowed. When he sang the final notes of Exodus, the crowd wouldn't let him go. They chanted his name. They wept. They reached toward the stage like they were trying to touch something sacred. Bob stood at the microphone one last time, his voice weakened now. "Remember," he said, "Babylon can't win if we don't let them. Love is stronger than bullets. Music is stronger than guns. And we," he gestured to the massive crowd, to the band, to the entire nation watching, "we are stronger than fear." Then Bob Marley walked off that stage, got into a waiting car, and vanished into the night. Within 24 hours, Bob and his family left Jamaica. He wouldn't return for over a year. The death threats were too real, the danger too present. Bob Marley spent the next 18 months in exile, in London, in the Bahamas, anywhere but home. He kept making music. He kept spreading his message. But he was a refugee from his own country. Driven out by violence, the Smile Jamaica Concert became legendary. Not because of the music, though the music was transcendent, but because of what it represented. Bob Marley, 2 days after being shot, chose courage over safety. He chose his mission over his life. He chose love over fear. Don Taylor, the manager who took 5 bullets protecting Bob, survived. It took months of recovery, but he lived. He later said, "Bob saved my life by giving me purpose. I took those bullets because Bob's message was more important than my life." Watching him perform 2 days later, knowing how much pain he was in, how much danger, that's when I understood. Some things are worth dying for. Rita Marley made a full recovery. The bullet in her skull had miraculously avoided her brain. Doctors called it impossible. Rita called it just protection. She returned to performing with Bob. If you want more untold stories like this video and subscribe to Marley Files, the Untold Stories. Hit that notification bell because we uncover the hidden moments that shape the legend.